It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Robert S. Coombs to you all this morning. He is a retired professor and writer. He is committed to strengthening families, welcomes opportunities to lead seminars and retreats for churches, schools, and businesses on a variety of family issues such as stress management, family systems, conflict resolution, spiritual enrichment, holistic health, and marriage enhancement. Dr. Coombs received his bachelor's degree from Carson Newman College, Master of Divinity and Doctor of Ministry degrees from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and a PhD in Child and Family Studies from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He has authored 6 books that seek to enhance the spiritual development of children and adolescents, plus build productive family living. For 20 years, Dr. Coombs served as a professor of psychology for Southern Adventist University. He also writes a weekly column, which I love reading, appearing in the Sunday edition of the Cleveland Daily Banner, and is currently writing a book, which we will need definitely to put on our list, focused on why individuals lose their joy of living. Dr. Coombs and his wife, Janet Coombs, Dr. Coombs to most of us, reside in McDonald, Tennessee. They have 2 adult children, Amy and Drew, and 3 amazing and adorable grandchildren, Cole, Knox, and Anne Marie. He and his wife enjoy playing with their grandchildren on their acreage where adventures seem unlimited. Both Dr. Coombs enjoy travel, hiking, and good food. In particular, horseback riding, model trains, reading, and talking with individuals about their dreams. His goal has always been to help others better understand themselves so that they can be better prepared to make healthy decisions.
I have to comment about too many books. One of my favorite quotes is C.S. Lewis. He said, "We read to know we're not alone." I love that. I love that because there is something about books, and I don't think you can be book poor. Just have books, books, and books because and I love going back over the years and look at books I've read and written in the margin, and it shows how I've grown and things I struggled with, years ago and that kind of thing. But I have found so much comfort in reading people and bringing to light my own struggles. All of us have those different types of struggles. So we read to know that we're not alone. C.S. Lewis. If you would write in any order the 10 most important things in your life, it can be relationship, it can be a possession, it can be your bank account, I don't know, your looks, whatever, anything, but just 10, and you need to do this very, very quickly. It's just kind of an interesting, but that's on the front of your handout, yes, with those little boxes you see in those lines. There's just, in any order, write 10 things that are very, very important to you. Any kind of relationship, anything. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I know this because I can see into the future. A little bit later today, this afternoon, you're going to develop a stomach ache. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And at first, you're going to think it was just something you ate at the prayer breakfast this morning, right? But it gets bad enough that you find yourself at Tenova in the emergency room with all kinds of pain. And you meet with a team of doctors, and they do some evaluations on you. So we have to stay here overnight. And they find out by the next morning that you have a cancer in your stomach. Okay, isn't that good news here to hear? And they tell you that this is a very aggressive cancer, and within 2 years you'll be gone. So you know that within 2 years it's going to be gone. You need to go back to prayer group, right? So as you're packing up your few things that you brought to the emergency room and spent the night, the main doctor comes in and he says, by the way, that list you made yesterday at your prayer group, you need to take 2 things off the list. You'll never, ever have them again. So if you just X those out, 2 of those things on your list, and you don't have a choice about this. This is, and if anybody put down health, that's a good one to cross out right now, isn't it? Because that's gone. So 2 things come off the list. So for the next 6 months, you start some chemotherapy, radiation, and all the things they do to try to reduce this and to make it go away, hopefully. And 6 months from today, you go back to the doctor that's in charge. And he said, well, we've been really working hard on this, but you only have 18 months. It's not what we're doing. It's not working. You just have 18 months. And so he sends you home again, and he says, but you got to take 2 more things off your list. Yeah, gets harder. It does. So cross off 2 more things. You'll never, ever have those things again. They're gone forever. Yeah, I know. Got them. A year from now, you go back to the doc. You've been doing a lot of praying. You've been going to church every Sunday and hoping, beyond hopes, that something you'll be one of those miraculous cures. And they have been very aggressive about trying to treat you. But when you sit down with this main doc again, he tells you really the same news. We're doing everything we can, but you're going to die within a year. So he sends you home again and says, you got to take 2 more things off your list. A year and a half from now, you go back to the doc, and what he basically says, you've got 6 months, and you need to put all your affairs in order and say your goodbyes and all that kind of stuff. But you have 6 months to live now. And he sends you home again. Of course, he tells you have to take 2 more things off your list. Yeah. It's getting tough. And then 3 months later, you go back and really you discuss your thankfulness for what they've tried to do to help you and the efforts that they've made, your funeral plans, all those interesting things that we all do. And he sends you home again, and he says, this time you'll have to take 1 thing off your list. So you should have 1 left, right? Yes.
I refuse to take any more.
I know. Isn't it like, don't. Yeah.
I'm now homeless and I refuse to.
It is.
How do I go home and tell my sister I wiped her off the list?
Was she one of the first to go, or?
She'll ask me that soon.
Oh, that's funny. So, why did I ask you to do this? Is it just a morbid exercise? No, not at all. It is actually a reality for all of us, for every single person in this world. It is a reality that everything that's important to us, our homes, our bank accounts, our grandchildren, our spouses, everything they disappear at one point in our lives, right? Everything goes away. So this actual little exercise was part of a research project that was done across America. And the interesting thing they found, regardless of your age, whether you're in your 20s or your 80s or 50s or whatever, was that if the only thing left on your list was something to do with your faith, those people tended not to only die better, but they tended to live better. Isn't that interesting? So it makes sense to me, because the only thing that you can keep until your final breath is your faith. Is that true? It really is. And we lose our sister and our homes and everything as we leave this world. And the only thing that we actually take with us is our faith. So is faith important to living? Absolutely. It's important to living well. And what I'm going to do today, and you'll see how this all fits together, I promise, as we go through this, but really try to advocate for the reality that living well has a lot to do with faith. And that's been studied and studied and studied and studied. And that psychology actually contributes to living well. And one of the reasons that I got a doctorate in ministry is partly the reality of understanding the relationship between our religion, our spirituality, our faith, and our behavior. And psychology blends those two. So they are not two opposing sciences. And sometimes we see that in the general population, like, oh, psychology, that's not godly. And it's simply not true. Everything that helps you understand more about yourself can help you grow. True? So we want that. We want us to be able to grow. So if you flip your paper over here, and like I said, we'll have lots of interaction here. You'll see a line like this you'll maybe see a line like that. Let's see. Let's try. Huh? Ah, that one works. Okay. And then you have a line on top here, and then a line here and here and here, and then just lots of little lines, right? That you just kind of see all those things. So on this end of the continuum, we're going to look for a minute at dependency. Okay? Dependency. You can't read my writing. I'm not going to even try. Dependency. What is it like to be in a relationship with somebody who's very dependent? Draining. I think of that. So write the word draining right here on this one of these lines below here, because we're going to have lots of characteristics. But yes, it just exhausts you, doesn't it? It's draining. Yeah, exhausting. Yeah, yes. Exhausting is another one. What else? Unhealthy. I mean, that just really captures it. You might ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I in this relationship? It's not helping me to stay healthy. Frustrating. Constantly frustrating. Trapped. Yeah. I think of that rabbit with its foot in the trap. We can't get away, unless it gnaws it off. Oh my goodness. I feel trapped in this relationship. Yes. What a horrible feeling to feel trapped. Huh? Irritating. Yes, absolutely. Irritating. Goodness. Suffocating. I can't get my breath here. I mean, have you felt that with somebody? They won't let you breathe. Yes.
I'm going to say joyful.
Joyful.
Because that person needs me.
Okay.
Seriously. And where would
Okay.
they be without me?
Without you.
Even though it does help me.
Okay. Okay, so joyful because they need you. And we're going to actually come back to that. We're going to come back to that. I'm not going to ignore that because all this is going to tie in. You'll see. I'm not going to predict here or run the surprise. But go ahead. Sometimes it's necessary. Absolutely. Yeah, it depends on the situation. I mean, can you give me an example? I think of one immediately for...
Well, I'm just thinking about my sister and what she's been through this last year. She's been totally dependent, not so much now.
Right. But she went through a phase of being totally dependent. Yeah. I have a nephew just had a stroke a year ago, and he's paralyzed on one side. He's 32 years old and paralyzed on one side down. He can't feed himself. Yes, there's sometimes it's necessary, right? And we have all kinds of cases with people born with problems or issues, or they're going through something very difficult. Yes, I understand that. Yeah. So.
And it's not that we don't feel all those other things.
Yes, isn't that interesting? But you feel like, yeah, and somewhat trapped and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's like that blessing that the complaint represented.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Having someone dependent on you, or
It-
some, yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
It could also
blessing
be.
because it
Yes.
represents-
And I've heard that with adults who've had children who are physically disabled or mentally disabled, and they talk about the blessing that child is to them. And they're not without their complaints, because it's exhausting and overwhelming and trapping and all that. But yet there is something that comes out of it that is wonderful. Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah, I agree. We all start out dependent, right? Everybody in this room started out with total dependence. And you hope your children get to a point one day that they're okay on their own, right? Don't you? Yeah. I read this little story this woman wrote, which is what's just wonderful about being at Toys R Us. And she said, I would go down the aisles and just cry because my 12-year-old was on still a 3-year-old level. And she said, and people would say things, oh, I just can't stand it. My children are not growing up. And she'd say, really? Really? We want them to grow up and to pay their own bills eventually, right? And be self-sufficient. Amen. Yeah, self-sufficient and such. So, but we all start out dependent, and we want people to work towards independence, don't we? Well, all dependence, and so you've already pointed this out here, is based on need. And some people justifiably have needs for dependence. Some people don't, but they want you to take care of them anyway, right? Is that true? There are plenty of people like that who will let you breathe for them if you would, So, yeah, and there are plenty of codependent people out there, and people who need other people to need them. That it kind of like a little wedding that happens between them, So, but it's frustrating for all of them, like you've already said. But dependence is based on need. On the other end, what's the opposite of dependence? Independence. Yeah. What's it like to be in a relationship with someone who is very, 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 very independent? Look at the extreme here. What's it like? What about me? Yeah. And you really don't, do you? So much even fit, do you? I mean, yeah. So what about me? Well, you're very secondary to me. Huh? Left out. Absolutely. Left out's another. Absolutely. That's very much related to. So, what else?
It could be joy.
It could be joy, too. That's right. You got a lot of me time, don't you? Yeah, that's true. You don't have to mess with him, right? Let's put a gender to this. Yeah, it could be joy. That's funny. What else? Lonesome, I guess. Lonesome. I think so. I mean, I think you start asking yourself, why am I in this relationship? What am I getting out of it? Why am I here? Huh? Lonesome. Yeah.
You're never alone.
Yeah.
I don't know that we could use many of the other words, but we could use frustrating.
I think frustrating. Yeah. Especially if you're married to a guy and where are you going? Out. Like, I don't owe you an explanation. We don't have to communicate. Yeah.
We could use a lot of the same.
You really could. I think that's really true. You can use a lot of the same attributes because the difference between dependence and independence is actually no real difference. And I can, like love and hate. Yes, exactly. Yeah, because the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, right? But yeah.
That's a very frustrating thing.
Yes, exactly. All dependence is based on need. And the interesting thing, because you're already smart, you're saying this, is independent is also based on need. But it's a reaction to need. Okay? Let's take a young guy who gets his heart broken by a young woman. Women are so bad for this, breaking guys' hearts, right? Yeah. And a very typical reaction of a guy once he gets his heart broken is to say, I'll never do that again. I'll never get that close to someone again. So they put on what we call a macho armor and pretend like they don't need anybody. But if you ever get through that armor, like in counseling and such, I've had guys I couldn't get rid of once I got through the armor. I mean, because they go from, I don't need anybody, to a desperate little boy inside saying, I really do need. I do want connection. Do you know men have more feelings than women? Isn't this, yeah? And a lot of women just get amazed by that because no, the feeling gender is females. But we now know through neuropsychology, we watch things light up in your brain, that men have more feeling than women, typically.
We got to do everything else.
Because they get overwhelmed with them.
They don't express it.
And when they get overwhelmed with the feeling, they shut down. You're exactly right. They don't express. And then you can say, well, he doesn't feel anything because he said, I'm just trying to watch the ball game, leave me alone. But truth is, he is overwhelmed with feelings, so he shuts down and he quits expressing. Doesn't it make sense? It really does. Yeah.
But they suffer more than we do.
They suffer more than you do. Well, and one of the things they suffer with is death. They're much more likely to die early. After 65, there are 6 women for every man in the United States. They're gone. They're gone because we have learned that if you pin up your emotions, it's going to affect you internally. I mean, some studies out there now are suggesting that 70% of all the hospital patients, older patients, are in there because of unresolved anger. You said, that's not true. It's high blood pressure. It's ulcers. It's all these other things. But living with suppressing your emotions and pretending like they're not there plays havoc on your system. It does. It hurts you internally. That's why, and this is going to relate to faith. It is. Trust me, we'll get there. But my goodness, living at peace with yourself and being authentic and being able to express what you feel. Even, I don't like this. Do you like the soup? No, I don't like it, actually. You know, being honest with your feelings and produces longer lives. It does. It just does. But none of you seem surprised by that. None of you seem surprised by that. Well, there is something in between here that is very healthy, but most people don't even know the word. Normalcy. You know, and it's not real normal. It's not real normal in the sense that it's not in the general population. Some of the research out there says as far as husbands and wives, only 1 in 10 married couples really love each other. Does that sound sad? Yes. Yeah. Now, half of them divorced, so it's no big, we can understand. And this generation right now that's entering marriage, the prediction over the next 40 years is 60% of those marriages will end in divorce. 60%. And it's a very sad, big picture reality. It is, of how discontent and unsatisfied people are with their lives. But yes. So in a sense, it's not normal because these people are living kind of an exceptional life. But the word is interdependence, I-N-T-E-R, dependence. Interdependence. And interdependence is not based on need. And this makes it something very different. And this is going to see a fundamentally different type of relationship. I don't need you, but I want you. Do you hear the difference between that? There's not the frustration, there's not the dependence, there's not the independence, there's not the suffocating, entrapment, jealousy, all the things that you all have mentioned. Interdependence says, I want this relationship. And I've chosen. And I would put on there as one of the first characteristics, it's a choice.
Yes.
I don't have to stay, but I want to stay. Isn't that cool?
Don't you think that that whole thing is based on not me, but we?
Absolutely.
The problem today and for the past
Oh,
couple
yeah.
decades is that it became the me generations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't want to work out what has to be worked out to keep a marriage.
Right.
They just want to say, well, I don't like what you're doing, I'm leaving.
I'm leaving. We have now entered the most entitled generation in the history of America. So if I'm not getting my cookies, I'm gone. Yeah, that's frightening. That entitlement of sensing that I deserve this just because. I don't have to work for it. And interesting that college graduates today will not have the same standard of living that their parents had. For the first time in American history, they'll have less than their parents. But they all believe they're going to have 6-digit incomes and happily ever after marriages just because they're special, not because they have to work for it. Yeah. But
The sad part is we created
yeah,
starting in my
yes,
generation.
yes, I think so.
I didn't have kids, so I didn't create it.
But we did.
Yeah.
We did, and
Give
we're
them everything because we had nothing.
yes, and
Trophies just
yeah,
for participation.
yeah. And see, developing just for participation, oh my God, don't even get me started. And we look back, even grandparents and all that thing with the Great Depression years ago and such, and we feel for people. Did you know it's easier to build character in deprivation than it is affluence? Absolutely.
Look at the greatest generation,
Yeah.
where they came from.
The work ethic that was there and the belief that the only way I can make it in America is to work hard and to put in the hours. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's so true. Other things with interdependence, it's a choice, it's what? What do you think you feel when you're in a relationship with somebody who wants to be in a relationship with you and you want to be in a relationship with them? What do you, comfortable, joy, happy. I mean, we've been talking about this little model for 20 minutes and nobody has said happy until just a moment ago. Why in the world would you be in a relationship where you're miserable? But so many people are. You're better off to have a goldfish. Trust me. You are. Yeah. Caring, genuine caring. I do this for you because I want to do this for you.
Sacrifice.
Huh?
Sacrifice.
And it's a mutual sacrifice. And there are times I sacrifice for you, and there are times you sacrifice for me. We're in this together. Healthy. Nobody's talked about healthy yet either. And here we are with healthy all of a sudden. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. my wife several years ago when she was in residency, because surgery residency is 5 years. They, for some reason, want you to have a lot of training before you cut on people. And she was in her 3rd year of residency. She started medical school, and our daughter started 1st grade, same week. So 9 years. So our daughter was a freshman when she finished her residency, and so we just made it a way of life. It's just a way of life for us, and we made this huge agreement that she would never ever study on the weekend. That she would come home Friday afternoon, go to church, would play, we'd go to the park, we'd do all those things, and those 3 days would just be family from Friday afternoon to Sunday. And that's how she went through medical school, doing that without studying on the weekends. And she was first in her class. If you ever need to see a doctor, she's fairly smart. But her 3rd year residency, she's at 4:30 in the morning, she's on her way to the hospital. She hydroplaned on, you ever been on a wet day where your tires get a little bit off? And she did that, drifted a little bit off, and she had the cruise control set on 74 miles an hour, and it kind of pulled her off center, but she didn't panic. She kept her hands on the wheel. But when she came down the second time, she was way off center, and she was driving a Mercury Villager van, and because our kids were middle school and they didn't like to touch each other, and she flipped it end over end 3 times, end over end, and she said everything they say about time slowing down. And she said, with that first, when she realized that the back end of the van was directly above her, she said, this is it. I'm either going to die, I'm going to be mangled and senseless like people I've treated in the emergency room. And she said, there was an overwhelming sense of, I'm ready to die, but I don't want to die. You know that feeling? Just like I'm at peace with dying if it comes, but not now. The kids are just starting adolescence, and we've gone through so much with getting to this point in our life. And she said the second time she started this flip, she started thinking about the kids and what it would mean for them not to have their mother, and to finish high school, and to go to college, and to graduate, and to get married. And she says, I thought about all those things. She said time was just remarkably slow. And then on the 3rd flip, she thought about me. Finally, yeah, really. And
Good thing it was 3 flips, right?
yes, good thing she made it to the 3rd flip. And she said, when I thought about you in that moment, as my life is ending, I thought of joy. I thought, oh, that's so nice. And she said, one of the joys, I said, we've had such a good relationship. Not problem-free, right? Perfection? No. It doesn't exist, right? Perfection's based on shame. But on the 3rd flip, she said, I felt joy because I knew you'd be okay. And I knew you'd continue to be a good dad, and you'd raise the kids, and they would be okay too. And she said, because I realized in that moment, you don't need me to go on with life. And she's right. I would have been devastated. She's the love of my life. After 38 years of marriage, she's still the love of my life. But I don't need her. I don't need her. I want her, but I don't need her. So the relationships that we have that are interdependents bring energy and joy and happiness and all of those things. Now I'm going to go ahead.
Every relationship washes back and
It
forth.
does. That's such. Thank you. It does. That's and there are times when I felt more needy of my wife because of what I was going through, or she felt more needy, right? Just because of what we were going through. But you're right. It does. It just kind of. But
When the other one's in desperate need, then you have to be independent. You have to be the person.
Yeah, to balance that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's true. So, but what we're looking for, of course, is in the general picture, where do we want to live our lives? And as long as, and I could have a stroke later today, and I would be very dependent on her, and we've already agreed that's okay. That's all part of it. But as long as we're healthy enough, because it's all related with physical, mental, emotional, that what we want is to be as interdependent as possible. But you're right, we go through things that push us to one side or another. And we even see that in the biblical characters with feeling more needy at times than other times. I think that's absolutely true. Here's the jump that may make you a little uncomfortable. I think a healthy relationship with God is also based on want, not need. I don't know. Yeah, I know. Well, because I think that I have this thing about love God and do as you please. Now, does that make sense? Love God and do as you please? What will I want to do if I really love God? Just naturally, right? I just naturally will say, because of this relationship we have, that what I want to do are the same things God would want for me. I just really believe that. We talk about God is in control. God made us free. And for me to have a relationship with God that is authentic and joyful and liberating and free and everything has to be a matter of choice. There are people who are atheists who live without God. Isn't that true? Yes. They just, and say, well, I don't need God. And I can't argue with them. You can live and breathe and eat and raise kids and all that kind of stuff. You can. So I think to argue that we need God and we can look at beyond the grave and all that kind of stuff, I understand that. But ultimately, I think that a good relationship with God is based on want. This is what I want, not something that I need. And you all have known people. I mean, when I worked in church ministry for years, where God disappointed them. They lost a child or that kind of thing, a car accident or some horrible thing. I've known people who put down their faith and it was gone, right? It was gone. God didn't come through for me. Well, that's because it was a relationship of need and you didn't meet my needs. If it's a relationship of want, then it's like, then God will be with me through this too. And we'll get through it together. So I don't think God is in control. I think he's in relationship. And the better the relationship, the better our lives are. Question or comments about that? Or is that an unreasonable leap to make? So you don't come here this morning because you feel like you need to. It's because you want to. There's a difference. And our motives make all the difference in the world. I do these things because I love somebody or feel like I have to do those things. They make all the difference in the world. True? Yeah. So, are we ready to jump to the next thing? Yeah. Is that, because all this will tie, I absolutely will tie together. I promise, yes. Look on the other side of the paper, next to where you had those things, the three movements of the spiritual life. Henry Nouwen. Talk about dated. When I was in seminary in the mid-70s, a mentor professor came in and said, line for line, this is the best book I've ever read in my life. And it's called The Three Movements of the Spiritual Life. Reaching Out, the Three Movements of the Spiritual Life, Henry Nouwen, 1970s. It is amazing. It is amazing. It has stuck with me all of my life. I've reread it every decade. It is an amazing book. but reaching out, the three movements of the spiritual life. And what he basically says, those moves go through a progression. And the first thing you have to go from is from loneliness to solitude. Have you ever been to a party surrounded by people and feel lonely? So it's not the answer, it's just not having people. Why do people often feel very lonely?
They don't feel like they have anything in common with.
Okay, they don't feel like they have anything in common. Absolutely, I think that's true. That's isolating, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, suicide is now the second leading cause of teenagers dying in America. Third leading is homicide. Isn't that crazy? Because there's that many gang things going on that, yeah, accidents number one still, but some of those accidents are suicidal, right? They go down the books as an accident, but they were really intentional. I had kids die that way. It's obvious but their parents didn't want to, understandably. But yeah. So a lot of lonely. In this very affluent culture, there is a lot of lonely. In fact, the more affluent cultures around the world have more suicide. Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't think you choose loneliness, do you? You choose solitude, but you don't choose loneliness. You don't set out to be lonely.
I hesitate to say, I think loneliness is partly a matter of choice, that we tend to isolate ourselves and we tend to not get out there and find ways to get our needs met. Do you think?
I'm thinking about that.
Yeah.
Just don't connect.
Huh?
Don't connect.
You don't connect.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah. Against
It can be hard sometimes.
being hurt.
Disappointed or
Okay.
all those kinds of.
Yeah.
The person is looking inward and not upward.
Yeah. And fear-based that they become too afraid to look outward or upward. Absolutely. I think that's true. Yeah.
I think with our youth, and of course we get into this all the time at school, is the bullying
Yeah.
has become worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And that makes people lonely.
Yeah, it does. And that's where you feel like there's somewhat of a victim there. I'm not choosing to be bullied, but it is happening to me. Yeah, that's true.
Can it be a mental problem?
Yeah, it can be. I think we blame a lot of things on mental problems that really are a matter of choices. I'll get myself in deep water here, but some mental problems are not choice. They just, I didn't choose to be diabetic or to eat wrong. Yes, depending on the type of diabetes, right? Or I didn't choose maybe to have cancer. I didn't, but I can't. I could. I mean, I don't. I've never. I had a cigarette in ninth grade. That's not true. I've never smoked, and I've done everything I can to encourage that not to happen. So, but 3% of men get lung cancer without smoking. I could just, I'll go back to what you say. Is it a choice? Well, yes and no. I've chosen to do what I can not to get lung cancer, but I could still get it.
There's several
And
types.
I think that that's true of a lot of mental illnesses. They're a result of a lot of choices that we make that lead to mental.
So you're saying
Sure.
depression is, you could choose to not be depressed?
Yes, and I've argued with my colleagues about this for decades. Yes. Because, now, I know we're in a prayer group, but you heard this young lady use a 4-letter word just a minute ago. Did you hear it? Because it really hit me. Do you know what you said? I'll put it on the board. I mean, we're all, this is a 4-letter word because we hear it all the time from adolescence until 100, and that 4-letter word is hurt. I felt really hurt. Well, hurt, everybody says that they don't know what they're saying, is internalized anger. That's all it is. You really hurt me. Now, when I say that, you're supposed to feel sorry for me, right? Because you really hurt me. Yeah. But it's a fear of telling the person what you said, what you really think. Next time somebody says that, tell them what you really think. And then they won't say, you hurt me, they'll just be angry at you. Does that make sense? Now, I can make that jump and say, and I get a lot of argument here, that in the big picture, most of depression is internalized anger. Most of depression is internalized anger.
Some of it's physical.
Huh? It has physical manifestations. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. But part of making good choices, which becomes very difficult when you're depressed, the best thing you can do is make good decisions when you're depressed, because the better the decisions you make, the better you feel. Right?
If it's a chemical thing, though, you gotta have some help with that.
Yes, and I know, and there's all
They
kind.
overcome themselves.
Right, and I agree that you can reach a point that you need chemical intervention, and to stop that negative spiral. I absolutely can see that. Yes, that's different. Yeah, a brain injury
So a depression that's a result of a brain injury.
is different than a depression that's a matter of choices.
Just for a normal person
Uh-huh.
to say I'm depressed.
I'm smoked all my life. I have emphysema. It's hard to not see the relationship between the two, right? If I've smoked all my life, I'm going to have emphysema. It's just part of how the result of it. So there are choices that we make that can lead to depression, very much so. But there are also circumstances that can happen that can cause depression. I believe that. But a lot of the people get treatment for choices that if I had to just choose between counseling and medication, I'd choose counseling every time. And sometimes I need both, right? I understand that, and I appreciate that. I do. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And such introverted, more susceptible to depression because they're more introspective. They're more aware of their feelings and such. Also tend to be brighter people and see more of the complexities of life. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. Huh?
Part of that could be your, kind of the way you're raised too, your environment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think exercise is a great way to depression.
Yes, and
Feel better when you take a walk or work out or eat.
well, and one of the Bill Glasser has died now, but a few years ago. But he wrote a wonderful book on choice called Choice Therapy. But he said, if you lay on the couch, you're going to feel worse, and the longer you lay there, the worse you're going to feel. But if you get up and go for a walk, that it's going to send chemicals to you, endorphins to your brain that make you feel better. He said, or you can take a pill and get those endorphins stimulated. But he said, if you exercise, but if I feel depressed, I don't want to get off the couch. But you got to make yourself. But that's a choice, right? Yeah. But it can reach a point where you just have to get intervention. Absolutely, yeah. And that's true for any of us.
Does force intervention work? Does force intervention work?
No, not well.
Yeah.
Yeah. That almost, it's,
Like a son
It's-
taking his mother and saying, you need to see a counselor because
Yeah.
you're going crazy.
Yeah. You have to want it. Yeah. The success rate is so, anything that's like we can go to court-ordered stuff and all that kind of stuff, dismal success rates. Once in a while you have some, but they're outliers. But most people get better because they want to get better. Yeah. Which is going to tie in, that's really, you'll see this in just a moment, that when it comes from the outside, it's usually not helpful. It's got to come from within. Yeah, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. You got to look within yourself, right? You do. That's where all self-care really begins, is look. And that's part of the Holy Spirit, is helping us to look within and to examine what we need to change and to where we need to, what we need to let go of, where we need to grow. The interesting thing, and Paul talks about this, is that you can have solitude anywhere. Is that true? Even in the most hectic of circumstances in life, you can have a sense of solitude, a sense of inner peace, right? And we've known people like that, who've been like Nelson Mandela and such, who have imprisoned for years and such, and found a sense of inner peace in his circumstances. That the circumstances don't determine it. It's from, I can be at peace from within. And that takes a lot of maturity, but I can be at peace regardless of my circumstances. I'm better at that at times than others, right? I mean, that's just the honest truth. The interesting thing is we have a tremendous number of lonely people in this world. And loneliness breeds hostility. So when you go from lonely, you're going to become hostile. You ever been in somebody's home where you feel like, I can't be myself? You ever been in somebody's home where you feel like, I can cut the anger with a knife in the air? It's that evident. You know, and the last thing you would do is put your feet up on the table or that kind of thing, because, it would be you judged, Lonely people make very hostile people because they want everybody to be just like them, miserable. Misery does love company. It does. Isn't that interesting? In the same way that loneliness breeds hostility, solitude breeds hospitality. If I feel good within myself, I'm going to treat you better. Is that true? So we don't need to fix the other people in our lives. We need to fix ourselves. Because the better we feel from within, the better we'll treat others. You've been in those homes where somebody's really hostile? Does it make you just feel absolutely relaxed that I can be me? I don't have to be guarded by what I say? Isn't that cool? Yeah. So loneliness breeds hostility, and hostility breeds illusions. I would be happy if I had a Mercedes. I would be happy if I was in a good marriage. I would be happy if I had a big home. I'd be happy if I could travel. The whole advertising industry is built on illusion. From take this pill to buy this car, to own this, to have this status, all those things sell to lonely people. Is that true? I mean, it just breeds that. But the interesting thing, as you see here, that when you have solitude, it leads to hospitality, and hospitality leads to prayer. And I love Michael Quest. I have loved him all of my life. And for one of his books on prayer, he says that when prayer becomes what it should be, all of life becomes a prayer. Isn't it? Isn't it wonderful that we're sitting here breathing? Isn't it wonderful just to get up in the morning to feel the morning air, the dampness and such? It is so interesting. All the really important things of life, illusion makes you miss. There is nothing like the stars at night. Is that true? God has created this amazing world for us, And people live with such dissatisfaction. But they've missed what's most important, which is solitude, hospitality, then prayer. Now here, all those things are very internal. They are. They flow from you out. All the others, the other side of that, loneliness, hostility, and illusion are all external. Does that make sense? Thoughts about this? I think it's really important. Henry Allen, he's probably written, I don't know, 15, 18 books. I've read all of his works. He has this wonderful book on prayer called With Open Hands, and it's illustrated, got pictures in it. And he captures this loneliness and hostility and illusion with that we start out prayer with clenched fist. You know, it's almost like us against God. And when prayer becomes what it is, we gradually unclench our fists and open our hands and are receptive. And then there's this overwhelming sense of it really doesn't matter what life brings me. I can get through this with faith, with my relationship with God. Is that true? And that's an overwhelming sense of peace. I don't have to be afraid anymore. We'll get through this. Now, and his name's right there in the bottom corner, real small. Yeah. He was a Jesuit Catholic. Yeah. Yeah. Like say dated, but he's very relevant. Very relevant, yeah. Other questions about that?
Are you going to have time to get to the lower left?
Yes, the lower left, sure. Yeah. Let's see, let's make sure I didn't bring my phone, which means I don't have my watch on or anything, but we're gonna be done at 11, right? Yeah, we got to. Let me just say on the lower right, this is that people often believe, they keep looking outward. I'm not happy, so I'll find somebody and get married, then I'll be happy. Ever known somebody like that? And about 3 years into marriage, they're unhappy. I had a very, very troubled couple coming in, very troubled, like a very unstable marriage. They came in one time, they've been fighting, they came in holding hands, we're pregnant. You know, like all of our marriage problems are going to go away. Marriage changes you, but nothing changes you like kids, right? Yeah. So you think, well, the kids will bring us together. Kids actually don't bring you together, do they? They make it harder. So, but if we had kids, we'd be happy, you know, and then you just keep going out with this, you know, well, my marriage isn't great. Maybe if I just invest myself in my job, I'll be happy. And then, you know, well, I can invest myself in my community because my job's not any good. You just keep going out and out and out and out. And people live very frustrated lives because it doesn't work. It has to begin from within. What is it with me I need to change? What is it with me I need to work on? And if I work on my stuff, it's so interesting, my marriage becomes better. And then if we both work on our stuff, then we're better parents. And we're better church members, and we're better employees, and we're better community people. We just start. It has to begin with us, and then it flows outward. It does. Yes, this last little bit, I know there's a lot of stuff to throw at you, but I really believe that the key to feeling inner happiness and such, and let me say this real quick, because I just can't resist. If you put everything in life can be put on a continuum, everything. So I think everybody has to choose. And it gets confusing to choose, but in this concept, between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is external. Does meth give me pleasure? Yes. Drugs are one of the 3 leading financial markets in our world. They give you pleasure. That's what they do. But can they make you happy? No. We have all kinds of stories. Pleasure is external. And yes, we get the new car and we feel a sense of pleasure. We get all those kind of things. But we can still feel lots of loneliness and anger, hostility, illusion, and such. Happiness comes from within. And Jesus talked a lot about this. Happiness comes from within. So if I'm truly happy from within, then I get a lot of pleasures in life. Is that true? So happiness can be enhanced with pleasures. It can. But pleasure can never produce happiness. It just can't. Just produces debt, I guess. So I believe in this productive living, this that you see here, that living life out of balance often gets our whole bodies out of balance, and we get frustrated and angry and such. I think it's really important to have balance in life. And those are not original to me. I should have put a note there. That's the Quakers came up with that. Yeah, living life in balance, that productive living. Yes. Let me say, and then not, you brought bring this up, but there's something very important here that we don't often talk about. But in psychology, we have made great strides to understanding human behavior. But understanding behavior doesn't cause you to quit the behavior. An alcoholic, in other words, can to know why he drinks, and he still drinks. True? All of his life, until he dies. Understanding, even as much as psychology has contributed to, won't stop behaviors. Only faith stops behaviors. And the reason for that is that faith is a letting go process. A letting go process. You see why I have letting go in there? That people with faith, and this is always a very sacred moment for me. I have never lived without alcohol. I'm going to live without alcohol. That's a leap of faith. It is a leap of faith. And that's why AA talks about it, that a higher power, they've labeled it. But that relationship with God can say, I've never done this before, but I'm going to try to do it now. So although psychology will help you understand behavior, only faith will help you change behavior. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. So people stay in counseling all their lives and never change anything.
Yeah.
They do. Because I think it's too limited. It's not the nature of psychology to change people. It's helped them understand themselves. But it's so interesting when you have both, how you really can make a change. And you hear people who give up drugs, who give up porn, who give up abuse, being abusive and such. They just said all the time, I couldn't have done this on my own.
You can understand your behavior and just choose it anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And people do that all the time. And I know this isn't good for me, and I still do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Virginia Satir, back in the 60s, when women weren't doing a lot of psychology, it's all men back then, she came up with this thought, in which I always think it's brilliant, but she said, you can do away with everything if you just improve people's self-esteem, that they start making better choices. And knowing that I am part of God's creation makes me feel good about me. So I want to make choices that lead to better life. But all of us make choices that sometimes don't, and we go, really? I've done that. Yeah, really? I knew better, but I do it anyway. And those are some of those demons that we really didn't get to talk about. Yeah. I always told college students, and I said, every one of you in this room has an Achilles heel. Is that true? You know, everyone. I can be so judgmental about yours. I can. You know, I've never been on a diet in my life. Not a single time. And I love dessert. I'm just going to be honest with you. Food's never been my issue. It just isn't. I've got my issues, which we're not going to talk about here. But I can look at somebody who's struggling with food and say, what's your problem? You know, it's so easy to be judgmental of other people's demon. It is. And that's where this hospitality says, I have my stuff and I'm working on it. I know you have your stuff. The people who have helped me grow in life are the people who have encouraged the best in me, not the worst. Not judge me about my, you know, and that changes everything. Okay. I guess that's it, huh? 11 o'clock, time to go see grandchildren and